Hi folks, and this installment of Power Negotiating is called Knowing Your Market. And a lot of people are going to say, Reed, what do you mean know your market? I know everything there is to know about my market. Do you? Do you really now? How do you know what a property is worth? Well, great, I can go ahead and get that information from an appraisal. That's true, but an appraisal costs money. I know I could go to one of these online valuation services. Yes, that's true too. Can I show you a different way to do this? One of the things that I always like to do is if I go out to take a look at a property, I take along a cell phone and a notebook. And as I'm driving, I find the subject property, take a look at that, and then I will circle the block and I will go ahead and find other properties that are for sale, and I'll call them and I'll ask them the how questions. Here are the how questions. I'm looking for properties that are for sale, and I want to know how big, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, how old, how much. I'm also going to jot down what type of condition the outside of the house is in. And the reason I do that is if the outside of the house is in really rough shape, chances are the inside of the house isn't perfect. If the outside of the house is manicured, it's in immaculate shape, chances are the inside of the house is even better. So if I take a look at the outside, that's going to give me an indication as to what type of shape the inside of the house is. And I can do this fairly quickly because everyone knows how old the house is. They know how big it is, how many square feet. They know the number of bedrooms, they know the number of bathrooms, and if they're selling it, they know the price. Here's a follow-up question to that. How long have you had it for sale? And if you had any price reductions? If so, how much? What I want to do is I want to find out what's happening with that market. If they've had the property for sale for 6 months and it hasn't sold, it's overpriced, by definition. Once I do that, if I get 5 or 10 properties that are all within a couple blocks of this house, and I find 3 or 4 properties that are almost exactly like it, that's going to give me an indication as to what homeowners think the property should sell for. Now remember, these properties haven't sold, so they might be overpriced, but probably it's going to be pretty darn close. And that is one way to find out what a house should be marketed for and what a house is selling for. Next question. What should a house rent for? Back in the good old days, you used to go to the newspaper and you used to look for houses for rent. Now you might do that online. But what you want to do is you want to find out the same 5 how questions. How old, how big, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, and how much they're asking for rent. And as you do that, if you can find out where the property is located, you can get a pretty good feel. Now, let's go to a different level of sophistication. One of the things I have done is I've gotten a large map of the city and I've put it up on the wall. And I get some push pins. And after I go on one of my little runs there, and I find out what a property is worth by asking the 5 how questions, I'll put that information on a little sliver of paper and I'll put that up there with a push pin, right where it is on the map. Now Reed, why in the world would you do that? After a while, you'll mentally sort of fill in the gaps, and if you know what houses in a neighborhood are selling for, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,500 square feet, if you know what houses in that neighborhood are selling for and what they're renting for, pretty soon you can get a pretty good idea of the values in that area. And you want to know that. You want to know that so well that you can go into any area and just know, boom, this is what this house is worth. Now what if you go into an area and you have unique and unusual properties? You stay away from those. Why? You want to have a large number of buyers, and if you have a unique and unusual house, you might not have as many buyers. I want to find houses that are just like all the other houses in the neighborhood. Let's talk about farmland. Would you ever want to get farmland? It depends on your location. I would stay away from that if you possibly can. I'm looking for houses on less than an acre, hopefully in a subdivision, that are just like all the other houses in the neighborhood. I would not go after farmland. I would not go after commercial properties unless I was really prepared to handle the uniqueness of that property. Let's talk about buying commercial properties. This is slightly off the topic, but how do you know what you should pay for commercial property. Well, gee, could you do the same thing? Could you look for, remember, commercial properties have to have a tenant in them. If they don't have a use, it's useless to you, which means that if it's not rented, it's not making any money for you. So what we're looking for in commercial property is what type of rent do they charge per month? How can I find out what that is? Well, I drive around, I see commercial properties in that area that are for lease. I want to call them up and I want to ask them how big, how many square feet, how old is it, what's the rent? Number of bedrooms and bathrooms isn't quite as important here. And I want to ask if this is a triple net lease. Triple net lease means that the lessee pays the taxes, the insurance, and the mortgage, and all the repairs and maintenance. And when I do that, I can get a pretty good indication of what people are charging for rents. Now again, these are empty properties. They're not filled. So maybe they need to come down the rents a little bit. But that's going to give me an indication. And if I do that for enough commercial properties in that area, I'm going to have a pretty good feel for what I can actually rent that for. So when the seller says, oh, you could rent it for $30 a square foot, and the market is actually saying $10 a square foot, you'll have an indication. This is just another way to get a pretty good feel for what price you should pay for a property and what the values of properties are in buying properties and in doing lease options.